and welcome to our special coverage of the Russian invasion of Ukraine. I'm Coyote Okukulu. First, the headlines. Russia plays up China's support as it retreats in Ukraine. Ukraine suffers massive blackout after Russian strikes. Also, UN nuclear watchdog chief remains gravely concerned about the situation at Zaporizhzhia nuclear plant as long as shelling continues. Well, a warm welcome to the program on this rainy Monday morning. Well, as Russian forces suffer a string of stunning defeats in Ukraine, Moscow is playing up Beijing's support for its invasion ahead of a key meeting between Russian President Vladimir Putin and Chinese leader Xi Jinping this week. Russian troops were forced to flee the strategic city of Izium, which is their main bastion in northeastern Ukraine, on Saturday after a swift Ukrainian counteroffensive. It was Moscow's worst defeat since its retreat from Kyiv in March and a sign that the war might be entering a new phase. Well, back in Russia, senior Russian and Chinese officials put on a united front to pave the way for an expected meeting between Putin and Xi on the sidelines of a regional summit in Uzbekistan, which is their first face-to-face meeting since Russia's invasion of Ukraine. According to the Russian parliament, a senior Chinese leader has voiced explicit support for Russia's war on Ukraine, but claims that are not included in the statement from the Chinese side and run contrary to Beijing's previous efforts to maintain a veneer of neutrality. Well, Beijing has firmly refused to condemn Russia's invasion of Ukraine or even refer to it as a war. Well, instead, it has repeatedly laid the blame for the conflict on NATO and the United States. Well, power blackouts and cuts in water supply hit several areas of the Kharkiv region yesterday as a regional governor, Ole Sniobo, accused Russian forces of attacking civilian infrastructure sites, but Moscow denies its forces deliberately target civilians. The governor of the central region of Dnipro-Vex, Valentin Reznichenko, said Russian attacks had also knocked out power to several towns. Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky had also tweeted that parts of Donetsk, Sumy, and Zaporizhzhia regions were affected by power blackouts. The Dnipropetrovsk governor added on Telegram that 100% of the region had renewed its power supply. Well, following this incident, firefighters were seen tackling fire at a thermal plant, as a power plant in Kharkiv yesterday. Ukrainian officials accused retreating Russian forces of launching what they called retaliatory attacks on civilian infrastructure in response to a rapid weekend offensive by Ukrainian troops that drove Russia to abandon its main bastion in the Kharkiv region. The Deputy Chief of Kharkiv Region Emergency Services, Anatoly Torenik, confirmed that one duty officer had been killed following the strikes. And Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky claimed the country's military has retaken more than 2,000 square kilometers of territory since the beginning of this month. Mr. Zelensky said in his nightly address at this time, within the framework of active action since the beginning of September, about 2,000 kilometers of our territory have already been liberated. The Ukrainian president also celebrated the reported advance of his troops amid their ongoing large-scale offensive in Kharkiv region in the country's east. Earlier in the day, the Russian Ministry of Defense acknowledged the withdrawal of its troops from multiple locations across the region. Over the past 3 days, soldiers stationed in the area have been deployed, in fact, redeployed to territory of Donetsk People's Republic, the ministry claimed. For more stories, the head of Kharkiv Region's Civil Military Administration, Ole Sniob, says one employee of Kharkiv Power and Heating Plant has been killed following a Russian missile strike. He said via Telegram, as reported earlier, that rescuers, however, have continued their search. 9 out of 11 Russian cruise missiles launched towards eastern Ukraine on Sunday evening were shot down by air defense systems, according to the press service for Ukraine's East Air Force Command via a Facebook post. Well, staying with that all-important conversation on energy, Ukraine's state-run nuclear energy operator Energoatom says that the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant in southern Ukraine has been shut down. In an announcement, Energoatom said the number 6 reactor of the plant was disconnected from the electricity grid at about 3:41 yesterday. In the past 3 days, the plant and the electrical power system in Ukraine were damaged by shelling, with the number 6 reactor running at an extremely low power level to supply electricity for the plant's operation, according to the announcement. Russia's state nuclear corporation, Rosatom, also confirmed that the number 6 reactor has stopped operation, according to a report by Russia's state news agency TASS. Zaporizhzhia, one of Europe's largest nuclear power plants, has been controlled by Russian forces since early March. In recent weeks, the site of the plant has been attacked by shelling, with Ukraine and Russia accusing each other of a strike. In the meantime, the head of the International Atomic Energy Agency says he remains gravely concerned about the situation at the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant as long as any shelling continues. IAEA Director General Rafael Grossi said in a statement that despite this damage, plant operators and engineers have been able to restore one of the reserve power lines in very challenging circumstances to provide the ZNPP with badly needed external electricity. According to him, he remains gravely concerned about the situation at the plant, which remains in danger as long as any shelling continues. To address this serious situation, consultations have begun on the urgent need to establish a nuclear safety and security protection zone at Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant, also known as ZNPP.
Has caused a complete blackout in Energodar and compromised the safety operation of the nearby Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant. There is now a low chance that reliable off-site power can be restored. The shelling is putting in danger operators and their families, making it difficult to adequately staff the plant. Together, this has significantly increased the risk of a nuclear accident. Let me be clear. The shelling around Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant must stop, and a nuclear safety and security protection zone agreed immediately. A nuclear power plant can never be a pawn of war. Its fate must not be decided by military means. The consequences of such action are far too grave. The IAEA is at Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant and can facilitate the zone's implementation. There is no time to waste.
Meanwhile, French President Emmanuel Macron is asking Russian President Vladimir Putin to withdraw Russian weaponry from the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant, while Putin warned of the potential catastrophic consequences of what he said were Ukrainian attacks on the facility. According to the Elysee Palace, Macron had told the Russian leader in a call that the Russian occupation was the reason for the risks. He, however, condemned the continuation of Russian military operations in Ukraine and reiterated his demand that ceasefire should occur as soon as possible, as well as negotiations should begin so that the sovereignty and territorial integrity of Ukraine be restored. The French president also stressed the need to ensure the safety of the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant. The Russian Defense Ministry says Russian forces continue to attack Ukrainian troops in the regions of Kharkiv, Kherson, and Donetsk. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky on the same day said Ukrainian armed forces had taken control of the Chkalovsk in Kharkiv. The Russian Defense Ministry said in the past 24 hours, Russian forces had attacked Ukrainian forces in nearly 10 areas in Kharkiv. In Kherson and Donetsk, the Russian forces struck the armed forces and infrastructure of Ukraine, shooting down one M-18 helicopter and 4 drones. In addition, Russia said since September the 1st, the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant and the city of Energoda had been attacked 26 times by the Ukrainian side. Let's bring you more now. German Foreign Minister Annalena Baerbock has pledged further military aid to Ukraine in Kiev. During a joint news conference with the Ukrainian Minister of Foreign Affairs, Dmytro Kuleba, she says, "We will continue to vigorously support this hope for freedom, for peace, and for a life in democracy as part of our common European family for as long as you need us." She added that, in concrete terms, the support will consist of further supply of heavy weaponry.
Diese Hoffnung auf Freiheit, auf Frieden und auf ein Leben in Demokratie.
We will continue to vigorously support this hope for freedom, for peace, and for a life in democracy as part of our common European family for as long as you need us. In concrete terms, this means, as you have already said, that we will continue to supply Ukraine with weapons, with heavy weapons. Last week, we delivered a modern Cobra artillery locating radar and other anti-aircraft tanks. Another modern anti-aircraft system will be added very soon, and 2 more are in production. In addition, we'll be bringing heavy machinery for the construction of bridges and also for winter equipment. But of course, I hear, dear Dmytro, that you will continue to need this support, carried by the good news of the last few days and hours. And that's why we are talking intensively within the federal government about how we can further develop our support in line with your needs and requirements and the respective situation. We did that with regard to artillery support, with regard to the tank issue, and you made it clear again. Also, with regard to ammunition, we are ready.
Well, let's get some more insight on, day 201 of the Russia-Ukraine war. We're joined on the program this morning by Major General Pat Akim, is a leadership and security consultant, joins us from our Abuja studio. It's good to have you on the program, sir. Well, as I said, day 201, so much has happened. Well, new trend now. First, on the one hand, we have the Ukrainian military claiming that it has forced Russian forces out of about 20 towns and villages just in the past 24 hours. Well, we have the situation at the nuclear plant and the international concern. But with this latest reports from the Ukrainian forces saying, well, we have forced the Russian forces out, they're making a retreat, and Russia, of course, responded to that as well. What do you make of this latest trend?
Okay, thank you so much for having me. We've stated before and signaled clearly that this was going to be a grinding war of attrition. And it has not radically changed. It will still continue along that trajectory. You will recall that at the start of these operations, Russia signaled that it was not even a war. That it was just some military operations to clear Ukraine of some Nazi operatives and leadership. So I must signal and signpost clearly that nations, soldiers fight battles for nations and national interests that they believe in. So on the part of Ukraine, they are fighting because they feel they were attacked. Russia, on the other part, if you tell soldiers that all you are going to do is just some special operations to liberate maybe some enclaves and areas, then you end up with a body of troops that are not too motivated to fight. And I think that is what has happened. It is true that some areas, especially around the Kharkiv area, have been liberated, and many cities have been liberated. And Russia has reacted. In the face of what appears to be a rout, a defeat, Russia has reacted by attacking critical infrastructure and thrown the region into darkness, water, lack of water, heat, lack of heating resources. So it will continue on that trajectory. It's going to be, to say that any side will clearly declare that we have won is going to be, it's not foreseeable. It's going to continue on this trajectory of a grinding battle of attrition, where there'll be trading victories and trading places. You capture, after some time, we reinforce and capture back. It will continue on that trajectory for a long while. So that's my take for now.
Well, it's also been said that, well, the war, invasion, if you may, is entering a new phase, because this, as it's been reported, is like the worst defeat for Russia since March, when it withdrew from Kiev. So perhaps, from a viewpoint, maybe there's at least some sort of victory for Ukraine on this one. But looking from the angle of Russia, how significant would you say this retreat is on the Russian part now?
It is very significant. You see, because the hub, the East hub was Izum. That city, Izum, was the hub for logistics supplies, for staging operations, and it has been recaptured. So, and you know, to be clear, Ukraine had built up these operations with a lot of deception. They started by signaling and telegraphing that they were going to attack the south. So Russia moved a lot of troops to the south, thinking the main thrust of the attack would be the south, and then wanted to be hit from the north. So Izum being captured back again by Ukraine means that you will need to find another strategic location where to serve as a hub for your logistics supplies. On the other hand, on the part of Ukraine, when you extend your lines of communication the way they have done, you are now moving so far away and occupying a territory that is about 3,000 square kilometers. You are going to be overstretched unless you have enough troops to occupy ground. And on present intelligence and the strength they have, that may appear to be difficult. And that is why I say they will keep on trading places. You come in, attack, capture some areas, after some time, reinforce, your opponents reinforce, come back, attack again. So they will keep that to throw the knockout blow that will bring this thing to an end. Is not foreseeable in the future.
Oh dear. We'll get to the statement put out by the Ukrainian president in a moment, but you've described this as a grinding war of attrition. And I mean, we had recently the U.S. Defense Secretary, Lord Austin, actually saying, you know what, allied nations, we need to come together and talk about some sort of long-term weaponry support for Ukraine. So it would seem as though, yeah, more support is coming, but not just short-term, mid-term, perhaps true to your words, now long-term. And I wonder, with this new position from allied nations, the U.S., by the way, Russia has blamed largely the U.S. and NATO for this war. So they're sort of responding by saying, well, fine, we're with Ukraine, but for the long haul. Do you think that sort of tone gives maybe hope on the horizon for a possible end to this war? In a short term, don't forget, winter is about now.
Yeah, and that perhaps the approaching winter informed the kind of scale of the operations we are seeing on the part of the Ukrainians. See, if you look at the international community from the perspective of NATO and particularly America, you will be counting on the fact that perhaps your citizens continue to support this war, that they will not grow tired of it, that there will not be voices of resentment and opposition, that, look, resources should be used for our own citizens, not for something we do not believe in. And that is what the West is hoping, that support will hold steady, that it will continue on that trajectory. And on the part of America, America is prepared to go in for a long haul. Biden will be wishing that perhaps the November elections, he will maintain the House and maintain the Senate, or in the least maintain the Senate, so that support for Ukraine can continue going in, because there are some Republicans who do not subscribe to this support that is being offered by the Americans. So basically, yeah, it has gotten to the point where Western nations, especially the ones in NATO, are thinking that, look, Russia is a potent threat. So we must go in and use this Ukrainian situation to downgrade their capabilities to such an extent that they do not become a threat to us. So yes, that support will continue going. And that is why I'm saying that this war, because Russia is a big military power, capable of mustering supplies, whether military equipment or human resources, on a scale that will be unimaginable. So yes, Russia will not accept defeat. Ukraine is fighting, it's an existential threat. It feels that Islam was invaded, that the war was unprovoked. They are angry. They feel they must fight till the last person. So this battle of attrition is going to continue for a long, long while until somebody gets tired. And I don't know who will get tired. On the part of Ukraine, they will not be tired. They are prepared to fight till the last man.
And again, I will get to that, Volodymyr Zelensky's statement. But when you talk about Russia being a superpower in all of this, yes, Ukraine, smaller nation, but they have a lot of support from the U.S. and allied nations. But just recently, Russia played up the support, or at least perceived support, from China, which is another super nation. So I wonder, with this planned meeting with China, with the recent retreat, with the support that Ukraine is getting from the U.S. allied nations, long-term support. Now, China being in the mix, perhaps even more visibly now with the meeting, which we expect to see between the Russian president and Chinese leader. What do you think that does to the whole dynamics of the war?
China is a very big strategic player. The Chinese are smart. They are strategic in what they do. They have economic interests. And those economic interests revolve around the Western world and Africa. Russia needs China more than China needs Russia. So China will play along, but if they're expecting a support that is deeper than what they are getting now, I'm not sure they will get it. China will signal that we are with you in spirit, but not that they will release a huge store of resources for this war. They may share intelligence, they may support, but they're not going to get in because, see, China's economy is even taking a hit as a result of constant lockdowns. So it has not fully recovered from the COVID thing, and as a result of that, its economy is has taken a bit of a hit. As a result of that, they want to recoup. And trading with the West and Africa appears to be more viable than putting all your eggs in the basket of Russia. So yes, they will support Russia, but Russia should not count on something deeper than what they are getting now. The meeting, the plan is to show face and to show that, yes, we are together. Of course, the enemy of my enemy is my enemy, is my friend. So yeah, they'll show face, make some speeches, but don't expect a support that is deeper than what they are getting presently. Look, this war is going to go on for a long, long while. It will continue on this trajectory to be grinding artillery battles, asymmetric warfare. Russia is not going to give up because it's a big power. It does not want to be humiliated and defeated. Already there are voices in Russia now saying that they are being defeated. Some things that before you would not expect to be said on TV are being said. So it will get to a level where Putin does not want an uprising back home as a result of defeats in something that you termed was just a military operation, not a war. So Russia will throw in everything it has. It's capable of throwing in more munitions, capable of throwing in more troops, capable of injecting in more weapons, systems. Yeah, they've lost a lot because this thing appears to be a rout. As the soldiers were leaving, they left a lot of tanks behind, a lot of munitions behind, but Russia is a big power. And even if it is just big power, signaling as a big power in name only, but you know, you need to play to the name you are giving yourself. Russia is a big power. It has a lot of resources. It can do damage. And Russia is not obeying rules. You know, when you attack critical infrastructure, Articles 22 and 23 of the Hague Conventions on land warfare prohibit that. But Russia does it and, you know, appears to get away with it. So they're not playing by the rules. So you can expect that Russia will, it's a power, it's a superpower. When you have nuclear weapons, you are a superpower. So Russia will fight, Ukraine will fight. Ukrainians are not giving up. They will never give up.
I was really hoping we'll get to that.
To the bank. They're never going to give up. So
I was really hoping, Major General, that I will get to that statement, especially the one put out on Telegram by President Volodymyr Zelensky. But we have to run now, perhaps another time, and I'll maybe take that on with our next guest. But we'll have to thank you so much, Major General Pat Akem, a leadership and security consultant, joining us from our Abuja studio. Thank you so much for your thoughts on the program this morning.
Thank you for having me.
Well, after the break, Pentagon Chief Lord Austin says Ukraine's success in Kherson and Kharkiv is encouraging. We'll have details and more after this break. Once again. Welcome back to the program. U.S. Defense Secretary Lord Austin says that Ukrainian forces were having some success in their efforts to retake parts of Kharkiv and Kherson. The Ukrainian general says Ukrainian troops have recaptured more than 700 square kilometers. That's about 270 square miles of territory in the south around Kherson and in the eastern Kharkiv region, where they advanced up to 50 kilometers into Russian lines and retook some more than 20 villages. Austin made the comments during a news conference with his Czech counterpart in Prague, adding that the U.S. found the gains very, very encouraging.
The HIMARS using the Gimler's rockets have been extraordinary in terms of enabling the Ukrainians to service the targets that they need to service inside of Ukraine. And so they've used those munitions and things like HARM missiles to begin to shape the battle space in such a manner that they are changing the dynamics on the battlefield. So we see success in Kherson now. We see some success in Kharkiv, and so that's very, very encouraging. You know, coming out of the Ukraine Defense Contact Group meeting yesterday, I think we continue to be inspired by what we see from the international community in terms of a willingness to support Ukraine. You've heard President Biden say, and you've heard me say a number of times, that we're going to support Ukraine for as long as it takes. And I clearly get that same strong sentiment from the participants of the Ukraine Defense Contact Group. And as you know, you were there yesterday, there were some 50 participants in that group. So this is bigger than NATO. This is an international effort to support Ukraine.
Chechen leader Ramzan Kadyrov, an ally of Russian President Vladimir Putin, has criticized the Russian army's performance after the loss over the weekend of Izium, which is a critical supply hub in Ukraine's eastern Kharkiv province. In a message posted on Telegram, he considered the campaign was not going to plan. He says, quote, "If today or tomorrow changes are not made in the conduct of the special military operation, he'll be forced to go to the country's leadership to explain to them the situation on the ground." He adds that he is not a strategist like those in the defense ministry, but it's clear that mistakes were made. The criticism came after the Russian army's leadership appeared to be caught off guard by Ukraine's fight back against its invasion in the northeast. Mykolaiv Emergency Services said 9 people have been injured when a Russian missile hit a residential area on Sunday morning. A resident of a damaged apartment block, Serhiy Kravchenko, says the missile strike blew out the doors and windows of his apartment, leaving him with nothing intact except for his toilet. 69-year-old pensioner Zina says she saw how an hour or two after the impact, a house nearby collapsed. According to her, everything was shattering and buzzing. Then an hour or two later, everything rustled and something collapsed. The house there collapsed. The emergency services said that the damage done to the apartment block was still being assessed. Mykolaiv is a port city in South Ukraine located 60 kilometers from Russian-occupied Kherson and has been shelled for months. Well, let's get some more insight over this latest trends in Russia's invasion of Ukraine. We're joined virtually on the program by Kate Riabachi from Pretoria in South Africa. Good morning, Kate. Thank you for joining us on the program. Quite a number of issues to raise, but perhaps what you might consider some sort of silver lining, the recent retreat and the reports of, the take-back of towns and villages, about 20 of them. Seeing that latest report, how do you internalize all of that?
Good morning. Thank you. First of all, let's take this on positive note. As you said, it's the day 201 of the war, of the 3-day war that was supposed to be going on. And the Russian forces are progressing rearwards, and we are making a major breakthroughs, and the spirits among the Ukrainian public are high. We are very determined. We are progressing actively towards the northern Donbass axis, liberating over the 30 settlements, which is around 3,000 square kilometers and more than 1,200 square miles. As I say, among the Ukrainian public, the spirits are high. A lot of the refugees, in accordance to the UN HCR data, are returning home. There was the 1st September, the children started to go to school. So it was at the same time a celebratory event, but at the same time very reserved. At the same time, we have to keep in mind that while many people are returning back home and feeling more safer as our counteroffensive progressing, we have to keep in mind that as we progress in our counteroffensive, we are going to discover more and more atrocities, mass murders, a lot of horrible things, which will be significantly impacting on the reaction from the international community. But so there are two sides to it. The spirits are high. At the same time, we are mindful, cautious, and very mindful of the price we're paying for this counteroffensive.
So sort of mixed bag, definitely. I mean, there's this celebration, if you could call it that, with this latest retreat. There's what you said, I mean, new discoveries of atrocities. And there's the other part with this, the attack on the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant. I mean, we're heading towards a time when all the more energy is important. We're getting into winter. Yes, people are returning, but there'll be need for energy and all of that. Hitherto, I mean, energy installations were meant to be immune from wars and attacks such as this, but clearly that's not the case. So with this, perhaps call it downer, how would you say people are reacting to this, especially back home, celebrating on the one hand and then fears, perhaps?
Absolutely. As you said about the Zaporizhzhia ZPP, as it is called, Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant, practically Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant is becoming the capital of insecurity in the world. And the risks are incredibly high. Just yesterday, we switched off the 6th reactor in terms of establish the more secure environment at the power plant and around it. We are applying all the measures we can at this particular moment. We are mindful, we understand the risks. On the personal level, among the Ukrainians, as I say, the mood is celebratory and reserved as well, but at the same time, we have to keep in mind that for centuries, we are witnessing the situation where we have to be mindful that there are no stable agreements that can be made with the Russian Federation. Which I mean by that is, in the words of the former leader of the Republic of Ichkeria, may his wonderful soul rest in peace, Jahar Dudayev, he always said from their practice in Chechnya, you make the agreement with Russians and they don't follow through. They never follow through. They regroup and they replan. So we are acting very actively according to the situation. It's constantly changing. We are mindful of the risks. We are mindful of the risks that winter carries, but at the same time, we know that our allies are preparing energy-wise, food-wise as well in terms of the food security. And so we are as well. We're also preparing energy-wise for this winter. This winter is not going to be easy, but we are preparing.
You know, speaking of that, I imagine you've seen that statement which President Zelensky put on Telegram, quite emotional. In fact, some have described this as perhaps one of the most emotional statement, and I'll just paraphrase some of the things in that statement. And this is what he said, essentially: if they were to choose without gas or without you being Russia in this case, then they would choose without Russia. If they were to choose without light or without Russia, it would be without Russia. Without water or without Russia, they would choose without water. It went on, without food even, or without Russia. He says the choice will be without Russia, saying that cold, hunger, darkness, and thirst are not as scary and deadly for us as your friendship and brotherhood, referring to Russia. So it sort of gives you a sense of the mindset that the Ukrainian president, and perhaps by extension, the armed forces and the people have as you get into a winter. I'd just like to know how much of a reflection of people's mindset is this statement from President Volodymyr Zelensky?
100%, for sure. The social polling is showing over 90% people supporting the victory of Ukraine and going till the end. And as His Excellency Major General Pat Akim just mentioned, I really agree with his statement. We are going till the end. And as this week progresses, as this counteroffensive progresses, we are witnessing the clear signs, and in according also to the director of the CIA, we're clearly witnessing the signs of possible defeat of Russia. The morale is very low. The plans, many plans they've been making are broken. We are clearly seeing this through this counteroffensive we are conducting at the moment. And finally, Ukraine, over the past several months, has actively shown allies and the world that we're capable, and we will fight this war till the end. And as this week progresses, I also want to remember a few things. There is a reason why we have in Ukraine several expressions. First of all, it's abo pan, abo propav, which means either you are or you are not. So this war for us is for we are. We are, we were, and we always will be. Eventually, we have been fighting Russian Federation over more than 300 years. It depends where you count from. If you count from other civilization, then it's more than 7,000 years. So we are ready and we are prepared till the end. The second phrase really reflects on our culture and our stance in life. Is never say hop, don't ne кажи hop until you don't jump. So don't say hop until you don't jump and complete the task. We are very preserved people. We are very hardworking, and we are determined to go till the end. And the last one, which really reminds me to be thoughtful and mindful of this week's, last week's passing of Her Majesty the Queen. A lot of lessons have to be learned, and our strategy is keep calm and carry on. So we are determined. We are united, we are stronger than ever, and we are going to go till the end for our freedom, victory, and liberation.
Quite instructive words there. And really, for the onlooker, the average onlooker out there, the question is usually, isn't there just an easy fix to this? I mean, can't we all just get along? I know it's not as simple as that, but as we wind down, you have reiterated the resolve of the Ukrainian people, the support for the president and all. But on the flip side, I mean, you talk about Russia. A previous guest, as you referenced, talked about how Russia can be very strategic. Now, with this latest support that is being played up from China, the planned meeting between the Chinese leader and the Russian president, which some are saying might even change the face of this war altogether. Is that a concern for you as we wind down?
It is. That's absolutely correct. But at the same time, as General Pat Hakim mentioned, absolutely agree with this statement. Chinese are very mindful and very careful in their strategies, and the counteroffensive itself, the progression of the war of Ukraine, they always watch this very closely, and the action from the China will be determined by the further results of the war in Ukraine. So no unthoughtful decisions will be made. And the very war in Ukraine really determines the further progression of what China is going to do in the future in terms of also countries such as Taiwan.
Right. Quite an interesting conversation we've had. I wish we could go on, but we have to run now. To do this, perhaps another time. I'm hoping the next time we'll talk, maybe we'll talk about peace on the horizon, really. But I'd like to thank you so much. I'll be speaking with Kate Ryabchi, who is the former head of Ukrainian diaspora. She joins us from South Africa, specifically Pretoria. Thank you for your time, and we do hope that we can all get along eventually.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, and thank you for having me.
Well, Kate, reflecting the minds of Ukrainians out there. We'll go on a quick break now. When we return, we'll talk about the business angle as this concerns Nigeria and some other stories across the globe. Stay with us. You're welcome back. Just before we get into the calls for Bosnia to cancel that friendly with Russia, let's talk business, because amidst the attacks on Ukraine, data from the Foreign Trade Report of the National Bureau of Statistics indicates that for the second quarter of 2022, Nigeria increased its imports from Russia by 143%. Now, total imports from Russia hit about 21.84 billion naira in Q2, which is a massive increase from the 8.98 billion naira in Q1 the same year. In Q1, by the way, Nigeria imported 6.27 billion herrings and 2.77 billion blue whiting from Russia, while by Q2 2022, the country imported 13.39 billion naira of blue whitings, 7.21 billion naira herrings, and 1.2 billion naira malt. It's a lot, really. You just get lost in those figures. But one thing is clear, trade has since increased, well, I say in spite of the Russia-Ukraine war. We're joined by Ini John Mekwa to help us understand that, so we just don't get lost in all of the figures. Ini,
sorry about that, Kayode.
It's okay. I mean, clearly, so much is happening. How should we approach these figures? Because there is a war, and I hate to say maybe there's some sort of benefiting from that war, or in spite of that war.
In spite of that, well, I guess the first thing that comes to mind when we hear that Nigeria's import from Russia has increased by almost 1.5%, 150, I mean, 143 is quite significant. In spite of the war, will Nigeria be sanctioned? You know, will the West also look the way of Nigeria and say, you're going again, okay, the secondary sanctions, will it come? But so far, we haven't heard that. And we've also seen countries like Turkey, you know, trading significantly with Russia. We've also seen, of course, China and India buying the cheap oil and all of that. So I guess the West are trying to deal with the energy surge in the prices that they are facing, so they're occupied with that. So we're not hearing a whole lot about secondary sanctions. Now, the other thing that comes from this is, on the other hand, even though Nigeria is sympathetic with Ukraine, its imports from Ukraine is almost zero, according to the MBS, the figures from the MBS, because of, obviously, we need wheat, you know, which comes majorly from Ukraine, but Ukraine is very occupied with the war at this time, and fine, they have that deal, they're sending our wheat out of Ukraine through the Black Sea, but we haven't had anyone land in Nigeria yet, so import from Ukraine is almost like zero at this time, even though the one from Russia is surging, and it's fish, you know.
Well, I mean, isn't it just fair to say this is business, no hard feelings? Is that a way to look at it, really? Because business is business. Yes, there's a war, but as I say, life goes on. Even in spite of the war, there have been calls for some sort of ceasefire to allow food and all of that. So, yes, there is a war.
Those are humanitarian services. Now, in this case, when you keep trading with Russia, the annoyance of Ukraine especially is that you're helping to fund the war.
But on the flip side, isn't it just... Because, I mean, there are different arguments on the table, and it's important to perhaps touch on them. So, business here, it might not be humanitarian on the face value, but you tie these businesses to lives, to perhaps jobs being created, livelihoods being sustained. So in that sense, in spite of the war, isn't that humanitarian? Shouldn't that just be allowed under humanitarian?
Isn't it possible for Nigeria to look inwards and change its taste bud and also create those jobs.
It's a global village. I mean, you can't essentially shut yourself. I think it will be difficult. And you say that to us literally every weekday. I mean, it's business, isn't it? But clearly, lots of interesting issues.
Yes,
the digital ruble also comes into the mix,
Yeah.
as well as other things. But you know what? We'll continue this conversation tomorrow. In fact,
Sure.
in a few minutes on your show, I would like to thank you so much,
Yeah, thank you so
for those
much,
insights.
Kayode,
Thank you very much. Well, let's talk sports now. Ukrainian side Shakhtar Donetsk will play their UEFA Champions League home match against Celtic on Wednesday in Warsaw, which is the capital of Poland. Well, head coach Igor Jovicevich took 27 players for the game as the Orange and Blacks begin preparations in Warsaw for the upcoming match today. Pre-match press conference and open training session of the team will be held a day before the match. Shakhtar's under-19 delegation has arrived in Poland as well. All legendary Ukrainian football players and coaches have appealed to the players and coaching staff of the national team of Bosnia and Herzegovina to reconsider their decision to play friendly with Russia. Bosnia plans to play friendly with Russia on November the 19th. The Ukrainian legends are surprised and very saddened by the news that after such tragic events that have already happened and are continuing in Ukraine, Bosnia agreed to play a friendly match with the Russian national team. For more than 6 months, Ukrainian teams have not had the opportunity to play a single international game in their country because of Russia's full-scale invasion. Well, Inter Milan striker Edin Dzeko has turned down a call-up from the Bosnian national team for a friendly clash with Russia scheduled during the international break for the World Cup. Well, reports indicate that Dzeko has decided not to be involved in the match despite being his national team's captain and all-time leading appearance maker because of the situation in Ukraine. Bosnia had scheduled a friendly clash with Russia for the 19th of next month, the period in which the World Cup is set to begin. The Russian national team had been barred from participating by FIFA due to the country's invasion of Ukraine. And finally, on the program, fireworks lit up Moscow's famous Red Square as Russian President Vladimir Putin addressed a gala concert to mark the Russian capital's 875th anniversary. He told crowds Moscow was one of the most beautiful and comfortable megacities in the world. Putin also said a great job was being done to revive the capitals of the breakaway self-proclaimed Donetsk and Luhansk People's Republics in eastern Ukraine, which are recognized as independent states by only a tiny number of countries, including Russia. As part of the festivities, the Russian president also visited a new international samba center and opened Europe's largest Ferris wheel. Putin was taking part in the celebrations amid setbacks in Ukraine, where Russian troops were being pulled out of the eastern Ukrainian towns of Balaklia and Izium, located at crucial points on supply routes for its campaign in the Donbas region. That's been the program for this morning. Thank you for watching. I'm Kayode Okikelu.